ideologies. I think it's essays on ideology, not a plural, but anyways. Um, so let's get started. Like I said last time, that I kind of set up the ground in my lecture on Wednesday for you to understand today's lecture, and I told you that on Friday I will give you a PowerPoint presentation so that the whole notes and everything we learn about ideologies, and especially repressive state ideologies and ideological state ideologies, it all makes sense. For that reason, I kind of had a discussion in last class in order to generate your interest. So let's get started. All right, here is my first slide. We all have, especially Adil and Imra, who got the chance to read the notes, they must know that Althusser essentially talks about relationship of production and reproduction. So he says that, well, every society must reproduce the conditions of reproduction, its reproduction. Well, there is a production happening in society through, and labor is involved in that, of course manufacturers are involved in that. However, he says that in that it is important that we reproduce these two factors in order to maintain the level of production. And he says that it must reproduce productive forces, which means productive forces is actually your labor. It is important for uh, a society to have their reproduction of productive forces. And productive forces like journalists are productive forces for media houses. Similarly, laborers are productive forces for industrialists. And workers can be productive force uh, uh, for an organization or uh, a capitalist system. So Althusser essentially asks that these two, sorry, I apologize for the spelling mistake here. I'll fix this before I upload this PowerPoint slide on Moodle. I was talking about Althusser, who says that in order to maintain a level of production in a society, there should be reproduction of these two components. The first component is the productive force that I have already explained. And then the second component is that the existing relations of production, which means those who are subdued, they stay subdued, and those who are maintaining the power, and those who are enjoying the power, they keep enjoying the power. Which means that yes, in order to maintain a level of production in society, there has to be the reproduction of productive force, but with that there also has to be the reproduction of as existing relations of production. And then further on in his essay, he says that those means of production and those relationships of production are maintained by RSAs and ISAs. By existing relations of production, Althusser essentially argues to the relationships of power. And how is that relationship of power maintained in a society? It is maintained by ISAs and RSAs. All right, let's move to the next slide. I explained you Marx's state apparatus last time. Let's go over this one more time. So in Marx's writing, the state is a machine of repression. State has the power. Like, what is state? Of course, there are a few sections in the society that maintain governing structure of a state. Okay? That may include government, executives, legislatures. So he says that state is a machine of repression. State essentially comprises of those sections who act to repress people in order to maintain their control. And this machine of repression enables ruling classes to ensure their domination over the working class. If I take you back to my last slide, remember here I was talking about relations of production. He says that relations of production need to be reproduced. So they need to be reproduced so that ruling class can maintain its domination over working class. So the idea behind proposing the concept of RSAs and ISAs is to uh, talk about an idea that how uh, certain institutions or how the ruling class actually works in a given society to maintain its control, to maintain its hegemony, to maintain its dominance. And shortly we will also talk about media's role here, because this is we are studying this essay in the context of media, culture, and societies class. So, towards the end of my lecture, I will relate it with media, culture, and society. All right. The state is then, first of all, what the Marxist classics have called the state apparatus. Police, courts, army. I talked about this last time. Let's move further. Althusser's addition to, so in by proposing ISAs and RSAs, Althusser has essentially added to Marx ideas of state apparatus. I talked about this is again the same idea that I discussed in my last lecture. However, here I'm discussing it at length in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. So Althusser, he gave the idea of state apparatus, and by state apparatus he was of the view that state is a machine of repression. State is a sort of governing structure wherein ruling class maintains its power over working class by force. Repression means by force. When you subdue means you bring someone under your control, you quieten someone. I will write the word in the chat box. You may further search it. So I am writing the word to quieten someone. So that is repression. And Althusser added to Marx ideas by actually demarcating the idea of state apparatus into two categories. The first category that he proposed was ideological state apparatuses, commonly known as ISAs, wherein repression or control is maintained through ideologies, by the circulation of ideologies. And similarly, repressive state apparatuses, commonly known as RSAs, where control is maintained by force. So according to Althusser, ISAs must not be confused with RSAs. He's very clear about it, and he keeps saying that they both support each other, and RSAs, they exercise their control behind the shield provided by ISAs. Similarly, ISAs tend to circulate certain ideologies provided by the shield, which is provided by RSAs. But they both work parallel to each other, and they shouldn't be confused. Okay. Here is state apparatus and Marxism, again uh, described in detail. So the state apparatus in Marxism contains government, it contains administration, it contains army, similarly police, courts, and prison cells. Now you see, pay attention to all these institutions. Something that comes in your mind is that all of these are the institutions that exercise their control by power, by force, and sometimes even by violence. Remember, police, they exercise control by violence. They can they can torture people, they can punish them, they can arrest them. Similarly, courts give verdicts to people. Courts can punish people, or they can absolve them. And just think about the role of prisons. Prison cells are also a form of punishment. Administration, government. So all of these institutions, they exercise their control by violence, by force, by power. However, what Althusser does is that this state apparatus that is identified by Marx, he considers all of them RSAs. So he says that the state apparatus that Marx actually proposes or presents is can be categorized as RSAs. However, there is more to this structure of power. And what more is that? That is ideological state apparatus. Like you also control them by, you also control masses ideologically, which means that the ruling class has this tendency of controlling masses through the promotion of certain ideologies. This is ISAs, ideological state apparatuses. Now, this, you see this first sentence here. I think you need to pay attention to this and you need to understand this. According to Althusser, the hypothetical nature of ISAs need to be tested, corrected, and reorganized. Okay, let me explain what this is. Althusser essentially meant that the idea of ISAs, well, RSAs were already proposed by Marx. Althusser only categorized them that, yeah, we agree with this Marxist state apparatus, but let's categorize it as RSA, and then there are ISAs too. But according to Althusser about ISAs, he says that all of these ISAs that he's describing here, is showing here, he says they have hypothetical nature, which means that he's assuming that all of them play their role. And he is encouraging scholars, researchers to test them and then to further modify them, to correct them, and then maybe reorganize them. However, here they are not given in order of importance. They are given in even in Althusser's writing, they are given in just random order. They are not given in order of importance. So he says that these, because he's talking about his ideas. Althusser was essentially a philosopher, and a philosopher is a person who writes his philosophies, and most of it is based on their strong observation. Along with that, uh, their strong reading. They are very well-read persons. Because what they write, they ground it philosophically. It's, you see, Althusser here is not talking in air. He has read, of course, Marxism in detail, and what he's writing, he's situating his philosophies in Marxism. So, but again, he's saying that all of these are assumed, and by a hypothetical nature. My understanding is that Althusser is very open in saying that that all of these are unexamined assumptions. I'll repeat. My understanding is that Althusser is open to any sort of experiment, any sort of criticism, and all that. And he openly says that these are of hypothetical nature, which means that these are unexamined assumptions. These are based on hypothetical uh, thinking, and they can be tested, they can be corrected. And this is what I did in my research when I was explaining my article related to English advertisements in Pakistani schools and all that. So, and many other writers, many other scholars, students of mass communication who are engaged, not only mass communication, other disciplines as well, who are engaged in dissertation, thesis writing, or any sort of research, basic or applied research. Althusser openly invites scholars to test and further ascertain these ideological state apparatuses. I'll stop here to take your questions. I feel like I have been talking a lot. Questions, please? Does this all make sense? Anyone? Abdullah, Hassan, Arsal, Rakshan. Is Rakshan here? Yes, Fatma, go ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. I was while you were talking, has mentioned that these are unexamined assumptions that need to be corrected. And so, how do, for example, these education or family or law, like, how can they be corrected or reorganized? Like, does he mean that uh, new or theories should be made, or what kind of correction or expectation he is referring to. Can you explain that?
Yes, he's saying that they can be organized maybe in order, in through your research and through your findings, maybe you can say that the most important ISA is family. Family is a structure that you know, most of us are religious. Many of us who are religious, maybe we observe fasting in Ramzan, and we say our prayers in Ramzan, and we do all the worships in Ramzan because this is what we have seen our family members doing it. You see, the family ISA. Maybe if we were born in a non-religious family, or a family which is not very traditional as in terms of practicing religion, we may have not been that religious. So family is an important structure for the circulation, for the promotion of ideologies. So maybe through your research you can identify that in a person's life, or maybe in a society, family is the most important ISA. And then you categorize it, you put it in order. You say family comes number one, and then comes number two, political ISAs, and then number three is communication ISAs. So this is what he means, that you reorganize them. They are of a hypothetical nature, they can be corrected with, maybe there is any other ISA that Althusser is not mentioning, but it is in society, and uh, it uh, it is in society, it has its important role. ठीक है? So I would say to, I mean, sometimes I think that let me explain ISAs, Fatima, and then I'll ask you again if this answers your question. ठीक है?
Sure, ma'am.
अच्छा, आप देखें. Now, I have already explained this idea. He says that following institutions can be regarded as ISAs. Education. Althusser was very, in his notes, he is emphasizing this ideological state apparatus. You see, education is, I mean, even if a child gets only, what's this called, higher education, even in that case, not higher education, sorry, if a person is, if a person gets education only to the level of high school, it means that he has been in educational institution for 16 years. He says that for 16 years an individual gets a constant dose of ideology, any ideology. So educational institution especially, is a very important place, is a very important site where ideologies are inculcated, they are instilled, and they penetrate in individuals' minds. Education. Similarly, family. I was just giving you the example of family, and I said that many people who tend to be religious, maybe they are religious because of their family background. And so, and if someone is patriotic, or if someone has any ideology toward, let's say, anything, any sort of ideology, maybe it comes from the family background. We get many things from our family, from our family structures. Similarly, law is there. I am not sure why law is here. I'll recheck. Maybe I this is a mistake, because law is something that I think must go in uh, RSAs, or maybe it is in both. But I will recheck, and I'll get back to you on this, inshallah, in next class. And then he says there are political ISAs as well, political systems including different parties. Now we have seen that, I will give you the example of India here. Political parties, sometimes they also circulate ideologies, and we know that India currently is ruled by a right-wing party, ठीक है, BJP right-wing party, and they have been circulating ideologies like boasting animosity against Pakistan, talking about withholding water, river water for Pakistan. Similarly, all of these ideas, I mean, certain, that India is a Hindu national country. They sort of brag about this, that we are going to make India a Hindu national country, or India should be a Hindu national country. This sort of ideology they kind implicitly promote, which is giving rise to Hindu Muslim rights in India. So political political ISAs, like political parties, they also tend to circulate ideologies. Similarly, trade unions. The trade unions, they have their demands. We know many times trade unions, then whenever they are demanding any political or economic cause, they go for strikes, sometimes hunger strikes and all that. So like that is how they can promote ideologies, and they can kind of exert pressure to to get their gains. And then there is media communication, radio, press, TV. Certain ideologies are also circulated by media. Media plays an important role in the circulation of ideologies. And I have been giving you examples of ideologies related to nationalism, related to religion a lot. Media actually tends to float many other sort of ideologies, stereotypes as well. uh, like these ideologies sort of I keep giving the example of this TV drama serial Mere Paas Tum Ho, because I believe it's an example which is easier to understand. And the drama actually tend to promote ideology, patriarchal ideology, that if a woman shows a behavior of infidelity, she should be held more accountable as compared to her male counterpart. So see, media plays a very important role. And especially when Althusser was talking about media's role, um, he said that people get constant doses of ideologies through media. Sometimes even advertisements. I Last time I gave you the example of advertisements, that I was studying advertisements of schools and universities, and almost all advertisements said that spoken English, if they were hiring faculty or recruiting teachers, they were saying, well, spoken or and written English must be a proficient, the candidates must be proficient in spoken written English, which means they were circulating an ideology, maybe, that English is a superior language. And then culture. In Pakistan, I mean, I will prefer to talk about Pakistan. Cultures also promote certain ideologies. Pakistan has this culture of shrines, fairs, and all that. And many times certain ideologies come from culture. Culture provides us. So but when Althusser said that they need to be reorganized, corrected, tested, he meant that uh, ideologies like these, that the roles of these RSAs can be tested in research studies. Similarly, the role of these RSAs can also be corrected, which means the role of these RSAs can be modified, like Althusser modified uh, uh, what was his name, Marxism. So I hope that I have explained this to you now, especially this statement to Fatima. Fatima, first I'll let you speak, and then Nimra, you can speak.
Ma'am, when you were talking about the communication ISI, can we use the example of Hitler and how he used radio to spread anti-Jew propaganda?
I think, Fatima, this is a very good example. Hitler used a mean of communication, especially at that time, radio, to circulate his fascist ideologies. I think that's a very, very good example. Good job. Yes, Nimra, go ahead.
Ma'am, can we add social media in ISAs because it also promotes certain ideologies?
Yes, bilkul. You see, these notes, Althusser died in 1990. 1990s, 92, 93, I'm not sure about the year, but World Wide Web came in 1990s, and then social media, the invention of social media and its boom began in after, like in this century actually. So if we consider Thusser's time period, he's not talking about social media, but of course social media in our contemporary context, social media can be of course replaced. And similarly in education, he also talks about church, mosque, because church and mosque are also the places where people get education. Even if it's religious education, still they are getting education. And we know that unfortunately, some hardcore ideological uh, 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 I mean, very rigid ideological mindsets have been generated in Pakistan through this through this institution, through mosque, and especially the creation and popularity of TLP, Tehreek-e-Labbaik, is an example. You see, I would like to add one more thing here. Maybe Althusser or someone else, I need to recheck. I read it somewhere that in our contemporary context, the role of communication, media actually should come at the first place, because media is everywhere. Remember when we were talking about the idea of that our culture is we live in a mediatized culture, media is everywhere. So media has actually gone ahead of all these institutions: family, law, political parties, culture. Similarly, when we talk about our own culture, we have this culture, community culture, Bathak culture. Remember, uh, I remember from my childhood when I was little, my grandfather, my dada, was a hookah smoker. He used to smoke hookah a lot, my dada, my grandfather. And I remember quite vividly that he had his hookah community. And in those days, Friday used to be a holiday, and on Fridays my grandfather would usually sit with his hookah fellows, and they would talk about different things. Mostly they would talk about Bulle Shah, because I was born in Kasur and I grew up in the city of Kasur, and Kasur is where they have Bulle Shah's tomb, uh, and they would talk about many other things. So culture, in our, I mean, if for the circulation of ideologies, many times you may have seen in community gatherings people talking about conspiracy theories. Oh, America is failing Pakistan. You know what is happening with our economy? America is behind it, and all that. So culture also plays an important role in the creation and promotion of ideologies. Fatima, you want to say you want to say something?
About this, I want to ask, when we talk about language, for example, and how English language is did in Sunni culture, how preferred. So will that be included as well?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Your voice was breaking up. My internet was bad. Can you say it again?
Uh, I want to say that official ISI, will the language be also included? For example, how English language has been set about uh, if you know English, then you are educated, and if you don't know English, then you are not educated.
Yes,
So will
yes,
that be
yes,
considered as an example of cultural ISI?
yes.
Also, if this is
This
what is
comes from
cultural
culture.
ISI, I feel there is a similarity between ISIs and structural imperialism as well in this way,
Uh,
because structural imperialism also talks about how dominance of it, like dominant parties spread ideologies at times. So
yes,
they are similar
I
in a way.
maybe there are some sections where you see similarity. Actually, I do not. Johann Galton's structural imperialism is very clear about the ideas of centers and peripheries. And it says that the center of center state has a close relationship with the center of a periphery state. However, the peripheries of two countries are not aligned with each other. That is the main argument there. So if there are some sections in structural imperialism that may sound similar to you, I'm not sure about. I mean, I don't think Johann Galtung is very clear about how actually, yes, you are right. I do see some similarity, because he says that yes, there is similarity. When I think about it that way, he says that center is supporting center. So you see, RSAs are supporting actually the repression, and similarly, he says that uh, he also talks about this idea that uh, periphery center how center controls periphery, and then he talks about the role of culture as well. uh, there is some relevancy, I agree, but in order to further explicate that relevancy, you need to study structural imperialism in detail. By the way, let me tell you that the structural imperialism that you may have read in Thussau's book, it's a glimpse of the actual theory. The actual theory is more than 100
Yes.
pages long. Yeah, and it more than 100 pages long, and it appeared. It came out in 1960s, if I'm not mistaken, and appeared in a research journal. And it's a really maybe 100 or 130 pages long. So, in order to find the relevances, you need to actually you should have a grasp on both. I know structural imperialism, and it's been a while I read it. So for me to give you an exact answer, again, I'll have to read both of them, compare, and then I can jump to a conclusion.